Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you are doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, so today it's just kind of a little celebration video. I wanted to say thank you to everybody for helping to get the Dungeon Dive up to 10,000 plus subscribers as of the end of July 2022. Thank you, I really appreciate it. I don't do a lot of these self-promotion videos asking for subs and likes and all that just because I'm not good at that, and I just don't like doing it. I feel weird. But I really want to say a great, big, huge, appreciative thank you to the original Dungeon Dive patrons. It really does mean a lot to me that you continue to help financially support the channel and have been so supportive as I continue to work at the Dungeon Dive more full time. As of right now, I'm working on the Dungeon Dive 3 days a week. I am working at my day job 3 days a week and taking like 1 day off a week. And I have been sustaining that schedule for about the last 3 months, offsetting some of the videos with the Friday podcast, which don't get a lot of views, a lot of listens. I think they should be getting more because I think they're really good. So if you're not listening to those, why? There's some really interesting topics being discussed, some good interviews, and some good things about games and non-games, because I really do believe that it is just not beneficial to only focus on one thing, on one hobby. I have a lot of hobbies that I love, and I need to spend time doing other things as well. And I try to connect those things with this gaming hobby. And so I think it's interesting. It's more interesting to have a broader idea of like what the Dungeon Dive really is, what is going on up here. I also, as part of this more full-time Dungeon Dive, I recently finished up a first track of a dungeon synth kind of a fantasy new age album that I will be releasing. I posted that first song to YouTube, and that is called The Mists of Morning, and the whole album will be out by the end of the year. And I have also started on the game that I am designing. I think a lot of people are going to like it as long as I can keep getting there. Whenever I try to design a game, I always end up over designing and working myself into a corner, but I think this one is going to stick. I think so. But yeah, I really appreciate that financial support. It does make things easier, and it keeps some new games coming in and new things to talk about. So I'm really thankful to everybody for doing this, or for helping me do this. It does mean a lot, and getting over 10,000 subs is pretty cool. I think that's neat. So to celebrate that, we are going to go back to one of the places where it all started for me in this hobby. One of the first hobby games that I really got into, that really captured my imagination and took me away. And one of the original companies that I got into, and that is Games Workshop, and that is Talisman, the Magical Quest game, 2nd edition. And what we're going to be doing in this video is kind of ridiculous and totally subjective and doesn't really mean anything at all, but I thought it would be fun. And we are going to be taking a look at all of the characters that I have for 2nd edition. And this includes characters from the base game, from Talisman City, from Talisman Time Escape, from Talisman Dungeon, and the Adventure expansion. I don't think I have any of the cards from the White Dwarf magazines, but we're going to be putting these in a tier list, starting with S, the top tier, the best, working our way down through A, B, C, D, and E, the bottom tier. Now, I am not an expert in Talisman. There will be people who are going to comment on this video who know 1,000 times more than I do about this game. It is just a game I like. I am just a guy who likes some things and likes talking about them. I would never claim to be an expert in any subject whatsoever. I'm the opposite of an expert in most subjects, as most people are. Gotta know our limitations. But I'm going to be judging these characters based on their art, how much I think the character looks cool, how much I would want to play them if I was given to, if I had to pick between 2 or 3 random ones, which one would I appreciate the most? We'll be looking at their special abilities and how cool they are. And we're going to be keeping in mind, this is all going to be based on rules as written, because my house rules that I play Talisman with kind of nerf some of the characters, or it balances the game a little bit by making some characters less powerful. I don't try to nerf things, but my house rules just tend to do that for Talisman. But we will be taking a look at all of these characters and putting them in tier order. So let's get down to the table, celebrate 10,000 subs with a really fun video on Talisman 2nd edition. Everybody, we are now down to the table and we are going to start ranking our Talisman 2nd edition characters. And those, again, include characters from Talisman Dungeon, Talisman Timescape, Talisman City, Talisman the Magical Quest game, Edition 2, 2nd edition, and characters from the Adventure expansion. And I think that's it. And we're going to be ranking those by S tier, A, B, C, D, and E tier, with S being the best. Again, this is totally subjective and totally just for fun. I am not making any claims that these are actually official tier systems, that if you choose an S tier, you will always win. And if you get stuck with an E tier, you will always lose. This is just kind of a fun thing for me to do, to revisit a game that was very important to my development in the hobby as part of a celebration of reaching 10,000 subs. So I'm going to just shuffle these up real quick so they're not in any kind of order that could possibly influence me in selecting these, if that would even be possible. We will place those face down, and then let's start going through these characters with number 1, the Druid. So one of the things I am going to be basing off my tier list is the art. And I really do like the art of the Druid here. He has a strength 2, he's pretty weak, but a craft 4. And so he is powerful against in mind combat and psychic combat. Let's see his special abilities. He begins the game with 1 spell. Okay, that could be pretty helpful. So you may change your alignment at will. That's pretty helpful at any given time, though you can only be of 1 alignment. For example, if you are carrying the rune sword and you wish to pray at the chapel, you must drop the rune sword and leave it there to pray. So, you can only, certain places in Talisman you can only take part in if you are evil or good, and then certain weapons or as well. So both of those are pretty cool. Beginning the game with 1 spell can be powerful, but changing your alignment can be pretty good. Having a high craft with just the rules as written often doesn't lead to a lot in the game. So I'm going to put, but I do really like the art. So I'm going to put the Druid at B tier. All right, so B tier Druid, there we go. Okay, who is next? Okay, so from the Talisman Timescape expansion, the Scientist. A 2/5, so he starts with a 5 craft. He's very smart and pretty weak there. And what are his special abilities? Once you have gained a spell, you will always have at least 1 spell. Okay, that's really good. I've incorporated that into almost all of my house rules where there are magic-based characters, that they always have at least 1 spell. So like I was saying, that does kind of nerf a little bit one of the powers that makes the Druid special, but this character has it innately, so that's very good. And then let's see, you may repair the ancient artifact. You miss 1 turn to do so. You may take the alchemist from any character you land on. So those powers are very conditional, and you could play an entire game without ever really running into those things. So I think those 2 powers are pretty weak. I don't really like the art on this guy. It's okay, but it doesn't really inspire me. If I drew this character, I probably would not want to play it unless I was playing some kind of like thematic solo game where I wanted a more of a sci-fi feel. I'm actually going to put the Scientist down at D tier for that. All right, so the official ranking, D tier Scientist. Okay, here we have the Barbarian. I love the Barbarian's art. That automatically pushes it up for me. Strength 5, Craft 1, my kind of character. Just a big brute, rolling dice, killing things. Alignment is neutral, starts in the forest. You do not need to roll the dice in the forest, crags, or chasm. You are always safe there. Okay, that's really good because some bad things can happen to you there. Whenever you attack, but not when you are attacked by another player and you win. If you do not take a life from them, you may then immediately attack them a second time that turn. So this does kind of limit, I usually play this game in some kind of like weird modified solo way. And so that doesn't fill me with a lot of excitement for this character, but I do like the art. I think his powers are just kind of okay. I'm going to actually place the Barbarian in B tier as well with the Druid there. Okay, here we have the Knight, and the Knight's art is pretty cool. Kind of looks like the Bretonnian questing knight from Warhammer Quest there. If maybe he had some big old wings on his helmet. But this is whenever you are in combat with another player and your total strength is less than their total strength, including spells and all of that, your total strength automatically increases so that you are equal. But again, that's with another player. But I guess if we are thinking of rules as written, right, we were going to do that. So that does make him more powerful in a competitive game. And I might have to take a rethink of the Barbarian on that. No, I'm going to keep the Barbarian at B. But your total strength automatically increases so that you are equal. So this lasts the duration of that combat only. So it really does come down to a die roll when you are in combat with another player with the Knight. For each spirit that you destroy, you gain a craft. That's very powerful, actually. And when praying, you may ignore the result of your first die roll and roll again. You must accept the result on the second die roll. I'm going to put the Knight at A tier. That's pretty strong. And what does he have? 3 and 3. So a good balanced character, I think, the Knight. Okay, who do we have next up? The Dark Elf. Evil, special abilities. It starts at the graveyard. We have Strength 3 and Craft 4. You may drain the life force from any of your followers. To do this, discard the follower card and gain 1 of your lives. Okay, that's pretty powerful. He can go around collecting followers and then draining their life force to heal. Whenever you defeat another character in combat or psychic combat, you may force that character to lose 1 strength point or 1 craft point instead of a life. Note that you cannot take a character's score below its starting level by any means, nor take any points gained from the followers or magic objects. You begin the game with 1 spell. You are not affected by the siren. That's an all-around pretty powerful character, and I think I'm going to put that the Dark Elf in A tier there. All right, the Swashbuckler. I am not a fan of the Swashbuckler's art. The costume, the clothes, doesn't really do much for me, so that's automatically probably not going to put him above a B. He's good. Whenever you win a combat during your turn, you may take an extra turn. Okay, actually, that's a pretty powerful ability. You may only do this once per round because, Talisman base game is a race game. And a lot of people forget that. It's a race game. You're trying to win the game. You're trying to be the first to win. And having an extra turn could be huge. What do we have here? Strength 3, Craft 3. You may, if you wish, draw 2 adventure cards when you are on the field space. If there is a card already there, you may draw a second one. You may add 1 to your die roll in the tavern. I think the Swashbuckler's abilities do outweigh the bad art, the art that I do not like, and so I'm going to put the Swashbuckler at B tier there. Okay, here we have the Saracen or the Saracen. I'm not quite sure how to say that. The slave trader. So already, I don't think I'm a big fan of this dude thematically. He is evil though. I'm glad they did make him evil. But you do not lose a life in the desert. Okay, that's very situational. And instead of attacking a character, you may attempt to enslave 1 follower. Roll a die, and then you have to do what that says there. And then at the end of your turn, you may sell any of your followers into slavery. Discard the follower, and then roll 1 die and consult this table to see how much you get. I am not into slavery at all. I think that is a theme that I just don't even like to pretend, really. So I'm going to put that in E tier just because I don't like him. He does not make me happy. Okay, here we have great art there. The Astropath. I love the Astropath. I like the idea of the Astropath. Strength 2, Craft 4. You start the game with 1 spell and 3 gold. You may choose which warp line to move along in Timescape. So this dude is really good in Timescape. So kind of situational. When you attack another character, you may choose to make the combat psychic. You may not do this when you are attacked by another character. At the start of any combat, you may create an illusion. Roll a die. If the score is 3 or more, you evade. On a 1 or 2, you must fight the combat as normal. That's okay. His art and just the name, the Astropath, the art, and his scepter there, I do really like. I'm not quite sure I'm sold on the ability, so I'm going to put the Astropath at C tier. That is the first at C tier down there. Okay, who do we have next? We have the Thief. I do not like the art on the Thief at all. I've never really liked that Thief art. Strength 3, Craft 3. You may steal 1 object or bag of gold from any player that you land on. Okay, that is actually a really powerful ability, though. Just an automatic steal. I mean, you could steal a talisman from somebody. You may steal 1 object whenever you are at the market. Roll 1 die to determine what you have stolen. That's pretty cool. I wish the art was better. I'm going to put the Thief at C tier. Judgment has been passed. All right, here we go. The giant butt-kicking troll with a strength of 6 and a craft of 1. This guy is super simple. You need not roll a die in the crags. You are always safe. This is just a guy that you want to go beat up on things with strength. Pretty powerful. So, but kind of boring. Maybe I wish he had some other kind of power. But I am going to give the troll B tier just because I've had some good luck playing the troll in the past. Okay, the Philosopher. Special abilities. You begin the game with 1 spell. You always know what the top adventure card in the pile is. You may look at it whenever you wish. That is great. You always have some knowledge there. When you roll a die for movement, you may ignore the result and roll again. You must accept the second roll. Okay, in rules is written any power that allows you, that helps you move around the board is super powerful. Whenever you draw spell cards, you may draw 1 more than necessary and then discard 1 of those drawn that you do not want. And he has a strength of 2 and a craft of 4. Knowing the adventure cards and having the ability to manipulate your movement is super powerful, so I'm going to give the Philosopher A tier there. Okay, Witch Doctor, the first of one of the kind of like jingoistic looking character designs there. Strength of 2, craft of 4, evil character. You begin the game with a spell. Okay, for every 10 craft points worth of spirits you defeat, you gain either 1 spell or 1 craft. That's okay, but coming across that many craft points of spirits is pretty difficult in the game. But you do have the power of Evil Eye. When you encounter another character, you can choose to throw a curse on them rather than fight them. If you choose to curse them, they must proceed directly to the chapel by normal movement before they can continue their quest. That is evil. That truly is an Evil Eye. Because as you all know, movement, getting to where you need to go on Talisman is part of that win, is part of that race. And this is a real take that character that could be really mean and probably fun if you want to get real mean about it. So I'm actually going to put the Witch Doctor at B tier just for the ability to play that kind of character in a rules as written game. Here we go. The Chainsaw Warrior, one of the characters that I've done a solo playthrough of Talisman with. We had Ash versus the Land of Talisman. Ash as the Chainsaw Warrior there. You start the game with the chainsaw and the medikit. Okay, right there. I love that chainsaw and I love having that healing power. You may roll 2 dice in combat and use the higher of the 2 scores. That is fantastic because that happens in every round of combat. And you are never panicked by the satyr. That is kind of very, very conditional. So point number 3 hardly ever happens. With a strength of 4 and a craft of 2, the Chainsaw Warrior is clearly in tier A. And the Orc, an old school Games Workshop Orc there with a strength of 4, craft of 2. You are always safe in the crags. Okay, you don't need to roll a die. We've seen that power before. When you encounter a goblin, hobgoblin, or wolf, you may attempt to take them as your follower. Roll over their strength and they will follow you. They will stay with you for 1 combat. Add their strength to yours. This does not apply to other players' characters. Another player is the hobgoblin. He will not become your follower. And that would be really funny. If you have the wolf as your follower, you may ride it. Roll 2 dice for your movement. You are unaffected by the siren. Quite a few cool powers, but I think they're very conditional and nothing really sets me on fire there. So I'm going to put the orc in C tier there. The conjurer. Okay, I do not like the way this guy looks. The purple top hat does nothing for me. Let's see. Strength 2, craft 4. You begin the game with a spell. During the game, you always have at least one spell. That's great. Whenever you use your last remaining spell, immediately draw another. When you have more than one spell, you may keep a spell card after playing it if you wish and discard another spell card in its place. Oh my god. So you can keep a very powerful spell for the entire game. Wow. That definitely offsets the art, especially if you can get a really powerful spell. The Conjurer could be, that could just be a full win right there. So yeah, I'm going to put him in A tier actually. That ability overrode the poor art. The Hobgoblin, man. The Hobgoblin looks so cool with his flail there and that big beefy dagger. You need not roll in the crags. You are always safe. If you encounter any goblins, you may take them as followers. Any goblin follower, so you just take them. You don't even have to roll for it. That's powerful, but it is situational. Whenever you encounter a hobgoblin, you may send it to any other space in the same region, not occupied by another player. Whether you send it or not, a hobgoblin will not attack you unless you choose to attack it, and you are not affected by the siren. Cool art, but very situational powers. A strength of 3, a craft of 3. I think if I had a strength of 4, I would like the hobgoblin a little bit more. So because of that, I'm going to put that in C tier. And the elf. Classic art there. Absolutely love the elf. Strength 3, craft 4. You need not roll a die in the forest. You're always safe there. You may evade enemies when in the woods. And if you are on a wood space, instead of rolling a die for your move, you may move to any other wood space in the same region. Allowing you to manipulate the movement is very powerful, but the other abilities are very situational. And if you're playing with some expansions, I'm not quite sure how often those would come up. So for that, but the art, I think, does push it up to B tier for me. And the halfling, the little hobbit guy there. Strength of 2, craft of 3. Don't love the art. It's a little, I don't know. Something about it just doesn't spark my imagination. But if you end your move on a plain space, instead of interacting with this space or encountering any card or player there, you may immediately take an extra move. Okay, that's pretty cool. Whenever you make a die roll involving your craft, you may ignore the result and roll again. If you do this, you must accept the second roll. As you are swift and hardy, you must be beaten by at least 2 points in combat or psychic combat. That is amazing. If you are only beaten by 1, the result is a standoff, and you are not affected by the siren. The siren has a lot of characters who aren't affected by it. That combat ability right there is really, really powerful. I think that clearly puts the halfling in A tier. What a surprise. Clearly an upset moving that halfling up to A tier. And the gladiator, evil, strength 4, craft 2. You may add 1 to your die roll when rolling to save a life using a helmet, shield, or armor. Okay, so the gladiator is better at using armor. You automatically train your followers to be able to fight with you, adding 1 to your strength in combat for each follower. You cannot train the hag, poltergeist, or any follower who already adds or can add to your strength or who can fight in your place. You may choose to use all, some, or none of your trained followers in combat. If you use any in combat with another player and you lose, that player can declare any one of your trained followers who took part in the combat killed. So you can have an entourage of fighters who can train and fight with you. Getting followers is always good, and making your followers stronger is always good. So I'm going to place the gladiator in B tier there. Okay, the spy, strength 3, craft 3. Whenever you land on a stranger, you may turn the card over to show that the stranger is now one of your agents, and only you may visit him. Okay, that's super cool. Whenever another character starts a move from the space you are on, you may shadow him or her, moving to the space he or she moves to. You do not, however, encounter that space and must move on as normal when your turn comes around. So that could be beneficial if you were able to manipulate your movement a little bit more after you took that shadow move. You always know what spells are held by other players. They must show you the card whenever they gain a new spell. That's really powerful too, especially in a raw competitive game. And having that movement and having the ability to work with strangers exclusively. The spy might be my first S tier character. I could see those powers being manipulated to ensure a victory for sure. I'm going to put the spy in S tier. There we have it, our first S tier character, ladies and gentlemen, the spy. All right, let's see what we have next. Ah, yes, the Inquisitor. One of my favorite drawings. I absolutely love the way the Inquisitor looks. A strength of 2, a craft of 4. You choose your alignment at the start of the game after all their players have chosen their characters. You may keep this alignment unless you are converted. Whenever you land on another character whose alignment is different from yours, instead of attacking him, imprison him for heresy. When you do this in the outer region, the character is imprisoned in the city. In the middle region, the character is imprisoned in the castle. Imprisoned characters must miss their next turn. Oh, that's like a double whammy in a competitive game. You're forcing a character to move and miss a turn. That automatically bumps him up to A tier. When you attack another character, you may choose psychic combat if you wish. And you begin the game with one spell. Yes, the Inquisitor, definitely A tier. Forcing people to miss turns and forcing them to relocate after they've moved to a certain space. That is just, yeah, that can really throw a monkey wrench in somebody's game. And the sorceress, that evil looking kind of feral sorceress with a strength of 2 and a craft of 4. You begin the game with the spell. When you attack another player, you may choose to make the combat psychic. Instead of attacking a player that you land on, you may attempt to beguile them into giving you one object or bag of gold of your choice. To do so, roll a die. You must roll a 6 to beguile a good player, a 5 or 6 for a neutral player, or a 4, 5, or 6 for an evil player. You may take any one follower except the maiden, unicorn, princess, or animal from any other player that you land on, whether or not you attack or beguile them. I think that places the sorceress in B tier there. Those are some pretty powerful abilities that can manipulate a lot in the game. And the necromancer. Always love a necromancer. I love that necromancer art, and I love that skull scepter. He begins the game with a spell. Instead of attacking a player you land on, you can enchant them. If you choose to do so on their next turn, they can do nothing, and you have it instead. Oh man. So not only do they lose a turn, but you get their turn. You cannot use this power on the Crown of Command. You can evade spirits. If you do not evade a spirit, you may attempt to charm it. And once you have successfully charmed a spirit, you cannot charm another one for the rest of the game, and they help add to your psychic combat. That is really mean. That enchanting is a super mean ability, and in a competitive game, that could really give you the edge to win. So I think the necromancer and being able to evade spirits and charm them, yeah, I'm going to give the necromancer, because of the art, I'm going to put that in S tier. That is a great character. Love it. And the Space Marine, again, another character from Timescape here. You begin the game with a battle armor. While you are in the outer or middle region, you may fire your bolt gun at any character or enemy in the same region who is no more than 3 spaces away. So he has ranged combat there. That is super cool. You may do this instead of encountering the space to which you have moved or any other character in it. But you may only fire when there is an enemy or character within range. And a strength of 3 and a craft of 2. That's pretty good for just kind of like picking off enemies and picking off other characters. I think if I had the strength of 4, I would move this to B tier, but it's not quite as powerful as I would like a Space Marine to be, so I'm going to put that down to C tier. The Samurai. Samurai, a strength of 4 and a craft of 2. Pretty cool art there for a samurai. Instead of moving, you may fire your bow at a character or face-up enemy card up to 3 spaces away. The shot is resolved as combat. If you lose, the shot misses. If you win, the enemy is discarded. Or if a character, they must lose a life. So that's kind of like the Space Marine's ability, but you have to give up a whole turn to do so. You may use karate when you attack, but not when you are attacked. When you do so, you use your craft against their strength in combat. Yeah, but your craft is pretty weak starting at 2, but they do lose a turn? No, I think the samurai's abilities are pretty weak, so I'm going to put the samurai in D tier there, joining the scientist. Here we go, the ninja. Of course, ninjas are always cool. Strength 3, craft 3, with all kinds of powers. You may never have followers, so that's fine because a ninja is a lone wolf, a lone warrior. You may not own a mule or a horse. That makes sense. I don't want to see a ninja riding a mule. You may choose not to encounter any square you land on in the outer or middle regions, but you must always draw a card. So that's kind of cool because you can populate the board with cards for other people. You may evade any enemies in any of the spaces on the outer middle, so you can just evade around. You have the power to make a secret strike when you attack. Combat takes place as normal, except that you deduct your craft from your opponent's total. You win. If you win, you may choose to take either 1 life, 1 gold, or 1 object from your victim. That is a great character. Lots of board manipulation. You can steal items from people. So I'm definitely going to place the ninja at S tier. Love the ninja. The priest. This is just kind of a normal priest. I don't like the art in this character at all. You begin the game with 1 spell. After rolling the die when praying, you may add 1. You automatically destroy any spirit without resorting to combat. And you may not use any sword or the axe in combat, though you may use the axe to build a raft with a strength of 2 and a craft of 4. Having that raft can be powerful, but I really do not like the character art in this, and none of the powers really. If I had a choice between this character and another character, I would probably almost always choose the other character just because I would not want to play a priest or this kind of like normal priest. So I'm going to put him in E tier, just not for me. Okay, the woodsman. You're always safe in the forest. You don't have to roll there. When you are on a wood space, you may draw 2 cards and discard 1. You do not need an axe to build a raft in the woods or the forest. That's super powerful. That can help with movement manipulation. And when using an axe in combat, add 2 to your strength instead of 1. That is awesome. And let's see, if you defeat an animal in combat, you may choose not to kill it, but instead may take it as a follower. It will add its strength to yours until you are defeated. With a strength of 3 and a craft of 3, I am going to put the woodsman at tier A. Okay, so coming up next is the Warrior of Chaos, the Chaos Warrior. Oh yes, okay, this guy is definitely... Just looking at him, S or A tier. I love the art. I love the Chaos Warrior. The Chaos Warrior is one of my favorite characters in Warhammer Quest, and this dude is really fun too. So his says, you have the power to receive gifts from the gods of chaos. Whenever you kill an enemy, roll 1 die to determine what you are gifted. And you can get all kinds of stuff on a roll of a d6. You may only be gifted with the shield and the armor once each. If you roll these again, you get nothing for that kill. You have the power to corrupt. If you land on good or neutral character, you will turn them evil if you roll under their craft on 1 die. And then the unicorn, maiden, prince, and princess will not become your followers. That is fine because Yeah, who needs a unicorn, right? When you're the warrior of chaos. I love the Chaos Warrior. I would always want to play this character if I was given a hand of 3 or 2 characters to choose from. I love the random ability up there to receive the gift of chaos. I love the art. I'm putting the Warrior of Chaos in S tier. Okay, here we have another character from Timescape, and that is the Astronaut. What was the strength and craft here? 4 and 2. Okay, kind of typical there. Okay, so we have the Astronaut here with a strength of 3 and a craft of 3. The special abilities. You begin the game with the Combat Enviro suit, a Psi helmet, and a power axe. Take 1 card of each type from the Timescape purchase deck. If lost, these items can be replaced at the Space Fortress for a cost of 1 gold each. Okay, that's some pretty good starting gear. You may be healed back to your starting quota of lives free of charge at the Space Fortress. And after you have entered the Vortex, you will gain 2 craft the first time you return to the Space Fortress. That's pretty good. Those are some pretty good powers or abilities. Unfortunately, they all have to do with Timescape. And, you know, if you weren't playing with Timescape and you drew this character, you would definitely not want to play him. And even if you were, the chances of getting into Timescape and staying there to accomplish those things could be troublesome. But the art is really cool, and the starting abilities are really cool. But I'm going to put him in C tier. All right, and coming up next here is the Dwarf, the classic Dwarf with a strength of 3 and a craft of 3. I'm always surprised that the Dwarf has a high craft value. I would expect that to be like a 4-2. But his special abilities is you need not roll the die in the crags or the chasm. You are always safe. You may evade enemies when in the hills. You may add 1 to your die roll when in the cave. You only roll 1 die if you attempt to open the portal of power by craft. Okay, so that's kind of cool. You only roll 2 dice when in the mines, and you are unaffected by the maze. So this guy just is like, he's pretty much unaffected or better at dealing with all kinds of different things on the base board, on the main board. That's pretty cool. He's kind of like, he knows the lay of the land and can get around. If his strength was 4, that would probably be almost S tier. But I think because of these abilities, especially if you were just playing with the base game, the Dwarf would be a really good choice. So I'm going to put him in A tier there. Okay, coming up next is the Pirate with a 4-2. I'm not a big fan of the Pirate's art there, and that is a lot of writing on the special abilities there. So let's see what this says. Whenever you are in the game, any other character who pays the doctor in the city, the healer in the village, or the royal doctor in the castle must leave the gold counters on the appropriate space. No player but you may pick up those counters. Whenever you land on the city, village, or castle, you may plunder and take the gold. Okay, so that's kind of cool, but it's very reliant on other people participating in that ability with you. You may capture any stranger you land on except the witch, leper, judge, outlaw, or siren. The captive stays with you like a follower, but neither you nor any other player may make use of a captive. When you free your captive, leave the card behind face up on the board. You may only have 1 captive at a time. You may build a raft in the woods or forest without needing an axe. And you may add 1 to your roll in the tavern. So that's pretty cool. I like his abilities. This one up here, it is reliant on other people paying to heal at those specific locations, but that usually does happen in a game. I'm not thrilled with the art, but the abilities are pretty cool. And pirates, I like pirates. I wish there were more pirates in games. So I'm going to put the pirate in a B tier there. Okay, so let's see who is next. Yes, the martial artist. One of my favorite characters, just because he is a martial artist with a 3-3. And then let's see, whenever you are involved in combat, you may attempt a killer blow. In this case, neither you nor your opponent rolls as normal. Instead, you roll 1 die, and if you roll a 5 or a 6, you win the combat. If you roll a 1 to a 4, you lose the combat. So it kind of like puts the martial artist up there in Arkham Horror rules of looking for a 5 or a 6 for success. You may make heroic leaps. If you land on the same space as another character, you may choose to leap over it and land on the space beyond instead. You may only leap over one space at a time. So that ability, that killer blow, can be really good, especially if you're really pressing your luck to try to win the game quickly, because you can challenge just about any creature on the board and have a 2 in 6 chance of winning that combat, even if you are drastically underleveled. And I do really love the art. I always love playing the martial artist because I do like martial arts things. So I always put I'm going to put the martial artist in S tier because he's just a personal favorite of mine. And here we have the Centaur. The Centaur with a strength of 3 and a craft of 3. You are always safe in the forest and you do not need to roll the die there. You may add up to 2. You may add up to 2 to the number you roll for movement after you have rolled the die. Okay, anything that you can manipulate movement with is really powerful in the base game with rules as written. While you are in the outer and middle regions, you may fire your bow at enemies in the same region as yourself. You may fire at any character face up, enemy or stranger card, which is no more than 3 spaces away, so he has that ranged attack. The shot is resolved as normal combat. If you lose, your shot has missed, but you do not lose a life. If you win, the enemy or stranger card is discarded and a character loses a life. That's very powerful there, especially, getting out of range so you don't take damage if you lose. You are unaffected by the siren, and any other centaur you encounter will become your follower for 1 combat only if you roll over their strength on 1 die. I think the centaur is pretty powerful. Being able to manipulate your movement and also having that ranged attack is super powerful, so I'm going to put him in B tier there. Okay, next up is the warrior. I love the art on the warrior. Such a classic, just a classic talisman look there. Strength of 4, craft of 3, very powerful stats there. You may roll 2 dice in combat and use the higher one to determine your combat score. Super useful. You may use 2 weapons at the same time except when using the Holy Lance, Rune Sword, or Shield. Again, super useful. This is the guy you want if you just want to concentrate on strength and getting the job done through brute force. I love the art. I love the horns on the helmet. I'm giving the warrior S tier. He's my kind of character. Nothing fancy, just solid fighter. Okay, and here we have Indiana Jones, the archaeologist. Another character from Timescape here with a strength of 2 and a craft of 4. Low strength. That could be a problem. And his abilities say, while you are in the outer or middle region, you may fire your pistol at any character or enemy within the same. Okay, so this has that same 3 space range combat. You may use your pistol, yeah, exactly the same. So that's pretty powerful. Your skill in exploring allows you to add 1 to the die roll at the altar, cave, tomb, temple, shrine, and planet fall, and subtract 1 from the die at the mines, crypt, and portal of power. And you may evade the warp demon. So that's kind of powerful in Timescape. That ability number 2 is pretty powerful at exploration, but I think his strength of a 2 is kind of a detriment. And I think I would put the archaeologist at a C tier. Kind of seeing that a lot of the Timescape characters do end up down here for me for some reason. Even though I really love the board and I do really like the expansion a lot. Okay, who's next? The merchant. I hate this art. I just don't like the kind of high society look, nobles, merchants, tax collectors. I never want to play a character like that in a game. I'm not interested. Strength of 2, craft of 3. You begin the game with 3 bags of gold. You may evade goblins, hobgoblins, and ogres by giving them a gold. Instead of attacking a player that you land on, you may trade with them. If you choose to do so, you exchange any 1 object or gold of yours for 1 of theirs. They have no say in the matter. That's very powerful, though. And then when you visit the market or the blacksmith, you may also trade. You take 1 object that you want and give up in return 1 object or gold that you own. So those trading abilities are very powerful. They could really help you win the game. The problem is I would never want to play this merchant, especially with the way the merchant looks. but it's not terrible. So I'm going to put that in D tier just because I don't want to play that character. And the Ghoul. God, I love the Ghoul. The art is so good. Strength 2, craft 4. When you attack another player, you may choose to make the combat psychic. You may not do this when you are attacked by another player. Okay, that's pretty good. Whenever you defeat a player in psychic combat, you choose to take one of their lives to add it to your own. Okay, so kind of a vampire-like ability. And when you defeat an enemy, you may raise it from the dead. The enemy then becomes a follower and adds its strength to yours for one combat, after which it disintegrates. And you must discard it. You may not exchange enemies raised from the dead for additional strength points, so you can't use them for trophies. Very powerful ability. I like that. I wish his strength was a little higher. I think he is a solid B tier character, the Ghoul. I love the art on the Ghoul too. Very, very good art. And who is next? The Swordsman with a strength of 3 and a craft of 3. And this at the start of the game, take a sword from the purchase card deck. Okay, always nice to start with the weapon. You may disarm another character in combat. The character must drop one weapon if he or she has one. You choose which weapon is dropped. The weapons include sword, axe, rune sword, and holy lance. So kind of limited to any to the kinds of weapons you can disarm your opponents. The weapon is dropped at the end of the turn, whether they win or lose, so they can still use it in the combat. The card is placed on the space where combat has taken, and neither of you may take it when with you when you leave. Yeah, that ability, it starts off cool and just continues to get worse. You may parry when you are the defender in combat. This allows you to add 2 to your combat score, but if you win, the result is counted as a standoff. I would never want to play this character. That sounds really bad to me, so I'm going to put this in E tier. I do like the art, but those abilities they do not sound fun at all. And the Satyr here, all right, with a strength of 2, a craft of 4. You need not roll the die in the crags. You are always safe there. Lots of characters are safe in the crags. Let's see. If a player no more than 3 spaces away from you from the same region draws a follower from the adventure deck, the follower automatically joins you, drawn by the sound of your pipes. Okay. Instead of attacking a player that you land on, you may use your pipe to panic them. If you do so, roll 1 die and move that number of spaces around the board in either direction at your discretion. They must remain in the same region, however, so you can move players, you can manipulate them. But remember, quite a few characters are immune to the powers of the Satyr. They do not interact with the space they land on and move off as normal on their next turn, and then you are not affected by the Siren. That's a pretty powerful take, that ability that can really screw up somebody's hard-earned dice rolls. So, but quite a few characters are immune from that, and you can also get powers. I'm going to put the Satyr I'm going to put him in B tier. I think if he had 3 strength, I would put him in A, but for now, I think B is good. Okay, the Highlander there with his kilt. Strength of 3, craft of 3. When you are in combat, you may decide to charge into battle before you roll a die. This adds 2 points to your combat score, but you must miss your next turn while you recover your wits. Whenever you end your move on the hills or crags, you may take an extra move. You only do this once per round. And when you are safe on the crags and the chasm, you need not roll the die there. That's pretty good. Having that ability to just add 2 points to your combat, you get to give up a turn, but you get an extra turn in the hills or crags. So that kind of balances that out. This could be a really cool character, I think, if played properly. I'm going to put the Highlander in A tier. The Pilgrim, one of my favorite pieces of art in the game. I love it. Strength of 2, a craft of 4. You begin the game with a spell. When you encounter a spirit, instead of fighting it, you may exercise by moving it to another space in the same region that is not occupied by another player. You may attempt to convert any monster you encounter. To do so, you must roll the die and score higher than its strength. If you roll equal to or lower than its strength, you fail and it attacks you as normal. If you succeed in converting a monster, it becomes your bodyguard and will fight instead of you in any combat you so choose. You may only have one such bodyguard at any time. Any enemies killed by the bodyguard cannot be saved for extra strength. Kind of limited. You are limited to converting only weak enemies, but that can help you survive long enough at the beginning of the game to build up your character, and that is an important part of the game. I think if his strength was 3 and his craft was 3, I would like the character overall a little bit better, but I'm going to put the pilgrim in B tier. Okay, and here we have the Prophetess. Yes, with the strength of 2, craft of 4, you begin the game with a spell. During the game, you always have at least one spell. Very powerful. Whenever you have to draw adventure cards, you may draw one card more than necessary and then discard the one, so they get to choose what they encounter. And at any time during the game, you may look at the spell card held by other players. The Prophetess is a very powerful character. I've seen her win multiple times, always having a spell, being able to choose what you encounter from a choice from the adventure cards is super powerful. The Prophetess is definitely S tier. I've actually won the game with the Prophetess a couple of times. And the Leprechaun. Strength 2, craft of 4. You begin the game with 2 spells. You need not roll the die in the forest. You are always safe there. Whenever you roll a 6 for your movement, you may, instead of moving normally, choose to teleport to any space in the same region. Okay, while that is relies on rolling that 6, when you do, that is super, super powerful. And again, you are not affected by the siren. One really, really great ability there. I think the Leprechaun, but that strength of 2, craft of 4, having to have that 6 there, you have to rely upon rolling that 6. If it was a 5 or a 6, I would definitely put the Leprechaun in B or maybe A tier. But I think I'm going to put the Leprechaun in C tier just because that 6 can be hard to hit. Okay, and what do we have next? The Ranger. Love the Ranger. This always reminded me of a Lone Wolf character from Joe Deaver and Gary Chalk's Lone Wolf. And 3/3 for the stance there. You need not roll a die in the crags, forests, or chasm, so he's good at traveling around. He is a ranger. You may choose to ignore the effects of the storm and the blizzard, so those environmental things that infect an entire region. You do not lose a life in the desert. You may add 1 to your die roll when in combat with dragons or animals. It's kind of an all-around quality character that can really help getting around the region safely. And with the balanced stats, I'm going to put the Ranger in B tier there. B tier filling up there. All right, next up is the Rogue. I never really liked the Rogue drawing, but he has a 3/3. You begin the game with 1 spell. That is also weird that the Rogue begins the game with a spell. Instead of attacking a player that you land on, you may, if your craft permits, take 1 spell from them. You may not look at the spells beforehand, but must take 1 at random. When you encounter the Enchantress, Warlock, or Witch, you may add 1 to the die result, unless you roll a 1, in which case you must accept that result. So those are powerful spaces to be able to add 1s on. But having this character be a magic-based character as a rogue really kind of, for me, is kind of a thematic disconnect. But I can't argue against its powers being strong. I would just not want to play this character, so I'm going to put him in D tier. And the sprite, very unique art. The art here looks something more like out of Popper's Ladder than Talisman. I'm not sure who did that art, but it is it stands out in the game. Strength of 2, craft of 5. And you do not need to roll the die in the forest. You're always safe there. You begin the game with 2 spells. During the game, you always have at least 2 spells. OP, that is super powerful. Whenever playing a spell reduces your total to less than 2, draw another spell immediately to replace it. And you may evade enemies when in the woods. Solid A tier character there. Not one that I would like to play, but I would not turn down playing the sprite if I had to. Always having 2 spells, yeah, that is Very, very powerful. And the Gypsy, okay, another one of Talisman's old school kind of jingoistic characters there. They were probably called a traveler maybe now, or a performer or something. Strength 2, craft 4. Your power of foretelling means that if you draw an event from the adventure deck, you may choose not to be affected by it. Okay, that's pretty good. You begin the game with one spell. Whenever another player places a spell on the discard pile, you may, if your craft allows, pick it up and keep it for yourself. Wow. Oh man, okay. Imagine these two characters playing against each other. One always has two, so they're always casting spells. And the Gypsy being able to constantly pick up the spells that the sprite casts. That that would be a really, really fun head-to-head game there. I would not want to play a character, the Gypsy. I don't like the way she looks. I don't think the art is very good. It's not appealing to me, but her powers are very strong. I'm going to put the Gypsy in C tier just because of that spell discard pile power. And here we have the Assassin. Love the art on the Assassin. 3/3 for the stats there. You may assassinate when you attack, but not when you are attacked by any player or any enemy that is already face up when you land on it. When you assassinate, combat takes place as normal, except that your victim may not roll a die to add their strength. If you succeed, you must remove one life from your victim. You cannot take an object or gold instead. That is super powerful combat ability for enemies that are already on the board. You may not use your power against the werewolf or the pit fiends. When you move from the Valley of Fire to the Crown of Command, you may use your power on anyone already there. Otherwise, you may not use your power while at the Crown of Command. So you can assassinate somebody at the Crown of Command. That's a unique power. I don't see too many characters having a power that specifically calls out the Crown of Command. I love that assassinate power. I love the art on the Assassin. Being an Assassin is always cool. I'm going to put the Assassin at S tier. And here we have the Zulu. All right, the Zulu, another kind of jingoistic character there, but a strength of 5 and a craft of 2. That strength of 5 makes the Zulu very powerful at the beginning of the game. You need not roll a die in the forest. You're always safe there. Lots of characters are safe in the forest. When you defeat another character in combat, you may, after he has suffered the usual penalties, rout him. You roll one die and move your defeated opponent that number of spaces in the direction of your choice. So pouring salt in the wound there. You may do this only in the outer or middle region or in the dungeon. That just does not really... those powers, while manipulating other people's space on the board is very powerful, it just doesn't seem like it's enough to balance out this character. But that strength of 5 is really good. That can really help you survive at the beginning of the game. I'm going to put the Zulu in C tier. And here we have another another timescape character, the Space Pirate. Love the look of the Space Pirate. Strength of 4, craft of 3, a solid character. You begin the game with 3 gold. You may evade any space in the timescape except the vortex and the sentinel outpost. You may steal 1 object whenever you are at the space fortress. Roll the die to determine what is stolen. If the object you roll is not in the timescape purchase deck, you get nothing. When you may add 1 die roll at the warlock, witch, and enchantress, unless you roll a 1. So we've seen that power before. 2 powers do rely on being in the timescape board, so that could be a little hard to get to if you move out of there. But this number 4, adding 1 to those spaces is pretty powerful with a 4/3 and beginning the game with 3 gold. That's pretty good. I would not mind playing the Space Pirate, especially with the way he looks. I'm going to put the Space Pirate in B tier. And the Minstrel. Again, I am not into that Minstrel look at all. Strength of 2, craft of 4. Animals and dragons will not attack you, though you may choose to attack them. That's pretty good, especially having dragons not attack you, because they can be very powerful. If you do not attack an animal, you may attempt to charm it. To do so, roll 1 die. If you roll higher than the animal's strength, it joins you as a follower and adds its strength to your own combat. Once you have successfully charmed an animal, you may not charm another one for the remainder of the game. Oh, that's only one. So if that follower dies, if that charmed animal dies, you're out of luck. That power becomes moot. You may take the maiden and princess from any player you land on, so you can charm the maiden and princess with your crafty songs there. And you are immune to the hag's curse. Discard it immediately. I would put this at D tier, mainly just because I don't want to play it, and I think that actually I'm going to put the minstrel in E tier. I would not want to play the minstrel, and having that charm only work once instead of only being allowed to have one charmed animal at a time kind of really negates the coolness of that power. E tier minstrel. All right, and the cyborg, another cool art, another cool looking character from the timescape with the strength of 5 and a craft of 1. Now, very unbalanced there, but that's cool if you just want to brute. If you wish, you may add 1 to the die when rolling for movement in the outer or middle regions or in the dungeon. Super powerful, being able to manipulate your die for movement. Whenever you lose combat, roll a die on a 4, 5, or 6. Your armored body deflects the damage and you do not lose a life, although you still lose the combat. A 50% chance of not losing life when you lose combat, super powerful. When you attack a character, you may choose to fight a second round of combat. Any spells or magic items used by or cast on either party remain in the force for the second round, and the unicorn maiden and prince and princess will not become your followers. Having the ability to manipulate your dice, having the ability to negate damage on a 50-50 roll, I think that puts the cyborg in S tier. So this is now, I think, easily, I think, the best character from Timescape. All right, we're getting down to the last handful of characters here. And the Amazon, I was never a fan of this Amazon art. It looks more Roman. I don't know, with the curse there. Is that a curse? That's called that leather. I don't know. Yeah, just not a fan of the Amazon's art. It does not appeal to me. But let's see, a strength 4 and a craft 2. Each turn for your movement, you may choose to roll 2 dice to determine how many spaces you can move. That is super powerful. If you choose to, if you lose or draw in combat, not psychic, you may ignore the result and immediately fight the combat again. Any spells or magic items used by or cast on either party remain in force for the second attempt. You must accept the outcome of the second combat. Okay, that's pretty powerful too. Even though I don't like the art, I think both of her abilities can really help out in a base game of Talisman. So I'm going to put the Amazon in A and B tier. The Wizard, one of my favorite pieces of art in the game, strength 2, craft of 5. Very crafty. You begin the game with 2 spells. During the game, you always have at least 1 spell. Whenever you use your last remaining spell, immediately draw another. When you attack another player, you may choose to make 1 combat psychic, or the combat. You may not do this when you are attacked by another player. You know, if you can pump the Wizard's strength up and get them a little bit more balanced, always having 1 spell is super powerful. And being able to attack in psychic combat can be really powerful as well, but I would say that the Wizard is A tier. And the Barbarian there, love the art of the Barbarian, very kind of brutal looking with a strength of 5 and a craft of 1. Of course, you do not need to roll the die in the forest, the crags, or the chasm. You are always safe in those spots. Whenever you attack another player and you win, if you do not take a life from them, you may then immediately attack them a second time that turn. It is just another player, though. I would hope that that would be like any kind of combat. Okay, the strength of 5, it's a good kind of like solid brute character. I wouldn't mind playing that character, but I would not love it. So I'm gonna put the Barbarian in C tier, I think. And the Monk. Okay, love the Monk. One of my favorite pieces of art in the game. 2, 3 for his stats there. I just love the way that looks. I love his giant Morning Star mace there dripping with blood. He just bashed something in the head. He's doing some kind of a holy symbol there. Great art. Love it. You may add your craft to your strength in combat. That is awesome. After rolling the die when praying, you may add 1 to the score. You may not use any sword, helmet, shield, or armor. That's fine. And you may not use the axe in combat, but you may use it to build a raft. So a little limited, but I do love the art, and I always will play the monk if I have the choice. So I'm going to put the monk in A tier. 2 more. The soldier. I never knew what the soldier was doing in this pose. It, it looks like a scarecrow or something. Strength of 4, craft of 3. You are unaffected by the patrol and the raiders. You do not have to pay the mercenary for his services. You begin the game with a helmet and a sword. If these are taken from you or lost, they may be replaced at no cost if you visit the city space. One of the city characters. The city had some of my least favorite art. The character is okay. I would say that's a solid kind of C tier character. And finally here we have the scout. With strength 3, craft 3, you are safe in the forest and the crags. You need not roll the die there. You may add 1 to your combat score in the woods or the hills. Whenever you land on a place, so a place is a card that comes out from the adventure deck, you may turn it face down to show that only you know the way there. Only you may visit that place from now on. Okay, that can be a huge monkey wrench in another player's plans there. These places are still counted as occupying a space, so cards are not drawn to replace them. That's a very powerful ability to have in a base game of Talisman. I do like the art there, and I'm going to give the Scout a B tier. All right, so we've gone through all of the characters I own. So let's go ahead and sum up very quickly here. At E tier, we have the Minstrel, the Swordsman, the Priest, and the Saracen. And at D tier, we have the Rogue, the Merchant, the Samurai, and the Scientist. Coming in at C tier, we have here, we have the Gypsy, the Leprechaun, the Archaeologist, the Soldier, the Astronaut, the Space Marine, the Barbarian, the Zulu, Hobgoblin, the Orc, the Thief, and the Astropath. B tier, coming up at B tier, getting into the upper tiers here of how I would rank these characters. We have here the Amazon, the Space Pirate, the Scout, the Ranger, the Pilgrim, the Satyr, the Ghoul, the Centaur, the Pirate, the Gladiator, the Elf, the Witch Doctor, the Troll, the Swashbuckler, the Barbarian, the Druid, and the Sorceress. And coming in at A tier here, some of my favorite characters in the game. We have the Monk, the Wizard, the Sprite, the Highlander, the Dwarf, the Woodsman, the Halfling, the Conjurer, the Chainsaw Warrior, the Inquisitor, the Philosopher, the Dark Elf, and the Knight. And finally, the top tier, the S tier characters, according to my completely subjective and nonsense reasoning. At S tier, we have the Cyborg, the Assassin, the Prophetess, the Warrior, the Martial Artist, the Warrior of Chaos, the Ninja, the Necromancer, and the Spy. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this tier list for this characters from the original 2nd edition of Talisman. And once again, thank you to everybody for supporting the Dungeon Dive through all these years and getting us up to 10,000 subs. I really appreciate it. And we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.